The last few weeks have been an absolute journey in the world of American politics. A historic presidential debate that reshaped the entire race, an attempted assassination of the former president Donald Trump, and news on Sunday that President Joe Biden is dropping out of the race. In between all of that, by the way, former President Trump selected J.D. Vance as his running mate. So we know the ticket for the GOP quest to take back the Oval Office. The other side of the aisle has a direction, but there are questions about how it will all shake out in terms of who will actually be on the ballot for the Democrats. Vice President Kamala Harris seems to have the green light from the powers that be, including President Biden. But who will be her VP? That is, if she ends up as the final option for president on the Democratic ticket. This afternoon, the Idaho Democratic Party published a news release saying that the Idaho Democratic Party, their convention delegates, unanimously endorsed Kamala Harris. Idaho Democratic Party Chair Lauren Necochea says that there is full support from Idaho's 27 delegates to the DNC for Vice President Harris. But wait. We have seen questions from folks at home who argue that they never voted for or caucused for Harris. They wanted Joe Biden on the ticket. But with him stepping out of the race, do they simply not get a voice? It's a fair question, and some Republican leaders have taken the opportunity to call for legal challenges to the entire situation because they believe Biden should be on the ballot. Legal experts are questioning if there are any legal grounds to really file any action in a court of law. But to be clear, President Biden was never the official nominee, an important distinction. Still, Republicans like Idaho GOP Chair Dorothy Moon, they're pointing to practical problems. Reacting to the Biden dropout, the GOP Chair Moon wrote in a statement, quote, "This means that the Democratic Party will disregard the voice of the people and allow a small number of party elites to choose their nominee. What was the point of the primary election?" she asks. So, what to do? Well, we sat down with the man in charge of Idaho elections. That's the Secretary of State Phil McGrans. He explains that his office is not really involved in this discussion because you need to remember presidential primary elections, or caucuses as Idaho had this year, they're party races, not state run.
In the case of the caucuses that we held here, both the Republican caucus and the Democratic caucus, it was to nominate the preference of the state to the national conventions. Those are taking place here in the summer. Republicans just had theirs, Democrats is coming up. And it's at the national convention where the collective national party will decide who their nominee is and send that information back to the states.
I've heard questions to the effect of, well, Kamala Harris didn't appear on the caucus ballot in Idaho. Is she eligible to be on the presidential ballot if she is selected by the Democrats? You know,
it's interesting. It doesn't work. It's not a state-specific thing. Again, it's the presidency. And so it's always possible you could have a candidate that didn't appear on an Idaho ballot become the nominee for a party because they were the nominee of the other states that was selected, and that becomes who is reported to us. Our deadline here in Idaho is September 3rd to receive the nominations from the national parties. So we've got time with this change. It doesn't really impact our office very much or impact us as a state. It's also a neat opportunity to remind people that when you vote on November 5th, you're not actually voting for those candidates. You'll actually be voting on the electors. There will be 4 names of local people who are the electors for each of the presidential candidates. You're voting on them to show up to the Electoral College and cast their vote for the candidate of your choice. And so that's just an interesting twist. Substantively, doesn't really impact too many voters, but it is all part of the process that goes back to just the founding of our country and how we've been doing it since the very beginning.
Because it's a democracy, but it is a democratic republic.
Yes, yeah, we are electing representatives, and I think the Electoral College is an interesting thing. It always gets talked about around this time. I'm sure following the election we'll be talking about it again because it's this obscure thing, but a state like Idaho, where we're a smaller state, we don't have the population of a Texas, a Florida, California, or New York. All of that matters because this is how we have a voice, is we'll be sending 4 electors to cast the ballots for Idaho.
So in terms of process, going back to the presidential ballot in November, does your office, I guess, just wait for an official communication from the national DNC, say, here's our final selection, and it's, I mean, in terms of what you do, is it just kind of a, okay, we got it?
Yep, exactly. That's effectively what it is. It's very ministerial at this point. There will be filing forms. We've already been in communication with the RNC regarding them submitting their nomination paperwork. We'll be working with the DNC just the same to get their information in.
So the DNC in a few weeks, they will make their big decisions. We will find out what happens. I think the big question looms, what could possibly happen between now and Election Day to change this all again?